plan application to the city of St. Cloud. That happened on July 21st. And so we are, I don't want to say we're on autopilot, but they're moving through that process. According to our contract, they do have 12 months, and that was 12 months from June. So we've got, and then they have 2 approval periods that they have to pay for, but within the next, call it 12 to 13 months, we should have a close. So we're keeping up with them weekly. Everyone hears news about the market and what's happening, and with home builders specifically. So we're just making sure they're moving along and doing what they have to do. And that's really it. There's not much else on that. Pine Tree, which again, we've also discussed a lot in the past. So we did run the.
Excuse me,
yeah.
real quick.
Sorry, did you guys have questions?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I just wanted you to finish and then before we go on. That's the one that, was there going to be any easement issues with the city of St. Cloud? On that one, I don't know if there's a turning one. Because now we talked about to get access to the property, they wanted to save so much space, in between the school, like as a buffer or something like that, or.
There's no evidence or indication at this point we'll have a problem accessing the property based upon the construction and facilities people who have analyzed it.
Right,
That's-
okay. Yeah, because right now there's a sidewalk, they actually have to build the
Well,
roadway and stuff.
there were some road improvements that we had to deal with.
Well, correct.
And we worked
On
that.
4th, and then we've got the access to Columbia, right,
the
on the
northern
north
piece.
boundary of the school.
Right, now is the buyer expected then to pay for those improvements, not the seller? So we're not on the hook for making those improvements to make it accessible for their use?
So, in the Second Amendment, which I did not bring with me, I'm actually not here today, but I am here today.
I know.
So we did a Second Amendment. I don't know if Marcos has that with him. We brought it to the board. So the buyer is having to do a large portion of the improvements, but the improvements on our property, we will do, and anything offside of our property, which are roadway improvements, they're having to move the utilities.
Even like on our property on the school itself, that's going to remain school district property.
Right.
Not, because technically we own the whole thing, but once we convey it, you're talking about improvements on
the
our side, that's still going to be
Lakeview
delayed.
site, yes, because the city of St. Cloud did ask us to take the opportunity during the selling of the property to address some parking, stacking, queuing problems. So we have taken on those improvements on the Lakeview property. But as far as the
Off-site improvements for the
northern
development.
piece and the western road, those will all be on Ashton Woods. That's part of that would be part of the development requirements to get through the city of St. Cloud. They had to meet those, so those will be on Ashton Woods.
I feel a lot better.
Yes, okay.
So we're not improving land, we're selling to somebody else to
Oh,
use.
no,
We're improving our
absolutely
own
not.
land.
No.
Just a quick question. My crystal ball's getting a little cloudy, because I'm trying to forecast what's going to be. And I think we all can pretty much see that the indicators are showing that it is going to be relaxing. We don't know how it's going to. Are you running into situations where builders are renegotiating? When you say we're not going to close for a year from now, we might be in a completely different ballgame. So
Sure.
do we have any non-refundable deposits? Okay, how is that?
We do, and, they're contingent upon approval. So, so they can't decide at the end of this that they don't have the money or that the market's not good enough to build and then walk away from that money. It's only if the city doesn't give them their approvals.
I thought in commercial deals like this, it would be essentially you go through your process of seeking your approvals and whatever during a period of time that you're on the hook. That's before you're on the hook to buy the property. But from what I understand, these people are on the hook to buy the property for a year, right? That only if everything is approved that they need to.
So you stage into that. So the first part is they get so many days to do their normal due diligence, survey, title, environmental and that. Once you finish that, then you go into the second phase, which is approvals, and the deposit becomes hinged to the approvals. So if they get the approvals, they have to close. If they don't get the approvals, they get their money back in most cases. I don't remember this contract.
Well, and because this was a comp plan, it was an institutional land use and zoning, so the site had to have a comp plan change and a rezone. And so I would say the past 24 to 36 months, if a property was zoned properly, it would be a different situation. But because this property was not zoned, they're not going to pay.
But that's the due diligence process, right? So you would go to the due
No.
diligence people and you would say, and legally, can I make these things happen, right? And then you go through that process and you go and you ask the municipality and then they tell you
have filed
yes,
applications.
right?
And so the
And
way.
that's where they are now.
Because we were selling this based on the value of it being developed
Correct.
for their use.
Correct.
And the zoning, the comp plan didn't match. So we have to give them time to get that done. So at the end of that period, if they're approved, or any time during that period they're approved, then they have to close or they lose their deposit.
Is there any, I know there's sometimes the city councils or county commissions will vote against something.
That's why they won't go hard until they get those approvals, because staff will say we support it, but they know they could have 500 people from the public.
But we're going to have a new city council here, is what I'm
Right.
thinking. So it might have changed the dynamics of everything. And it's
It
just,
could.
Yeah.
I mean, you've met with the staff, and everyone's talked to the staff, and they, to my knowledge, they've all supported it.
So that,
And that was part of the road stuff. They came back and said, we want to fix this
Right.
road situation. And so we had to go back in negotiations with Ashton Woods to figure out how we adjust for that.
so, and then unless the new board was to change the code, they meet the code. So unless they go back and change the code and something about their project no longer meets the new code, and I don't see that happening in the time frame of the elections to when we will close. So they did, the planning commission wanted the extra improvements to the north, like an extra buffer, a landscape buffer and all of that. And Ashton has agreed to all of that. So that was above and beyond the code requirement, but Ashton has agreed to do that. So even with a change of the board, as long as they're meeting the code, theoretically, the boards are not supposed to deny development unless they can show violation or not meeting a code. So they will be meeting all the codes as they go through the approval process.
The reality is this: if the economy really goes south on property, any developer is smart enough to know how to get the government not to
not
get
to
the
get, I know,
approval.
I know, I've seen it. Yeah.
They did, and they
but to
did
the-
change their concept.
But to the school district's concern, because I have to shield our liability in our time as well. Because to Mr. Arguello's point, traditionally, in my real estate knowledge too, the due diligence period is the due diligence period. Then after that, it's usually on financing conditions.
Not if it's not
Not
zoned.
for
It's not
commercial,
zoned.
that's not how it works.
But it's not zoned, but then why are we selling property that's not zoned? That's a whole nother ball of wax. Why are we selling something that we don't have? You know what I mean?
Well, but why
So-
would you spend money
but-
zoning it?
But the issue term is that after the due diligence period is up, because what happens too is people like to play the game the system too. I'll sit there and do a high bid to get it going, and if I get it, I get it. I have nothing to lose. I have no skin in the game. So a lot of people do that a lot. They'll shotgun it out. So I would even like saying in the future that after the due diligence period is over, maybe it amongst period of time it staggers down to sit there and say, okay, after the due diligence period is over, maybe not 100% of the deposit, but let's say 20% of the deposit. Then if you reach another milestone, like say a conditional approval, then it goes down and
But
down and
then- but
down.
Julie, if we're selling the property based upon it being zoned a particular way, it's just like when we buy property, we say, if we don't get it zoned, we don't owe you a penny.
Right.
They'll flip it on us, the developers, and say, guess what, you got to go hard, and if they decide not to let you
Yeah,
have the
but
school.
they need us. We don't
But
need
then-
them.
but then you-
There's a
Yeah,
big
but-
difference
but-
there.
Either that or you just don't build a due diligence
there's
period at
cases
all.
where we need-
Let's go
Yeah.
through this.
Money.
We don't
They
go-
need a school. You
Okay.
can't build any neighborhood. You can't do the development if you don't have schools.
Yeah.
We-
So they've been working on this project for a long time. So it's not like they just came in and made an offer and said, let's go see what we're doing. They'll invest and have invested a lot of money in this process. To go through their process isn't $5,000 or $10,000. It's
Right.
many thousands of dollars. So we vetted them as to what their history had been. And then we hit this thing with, there was easements and stuff and platted stuff we had to deal with. And then with the staff, they came back and said, we'll support this with the following conditions. So, and nobody's really gonna give you much money until they get that. I mean, I've negotiated billions of dollars, really, and on both sides. And they're not, you just don't throw money out there hard.
Their investment, if I may, is the tens of thousands of dollars, probably $50,000 to $100,000 or more. No, they will invest. I'll stand back.
I don't
I
know.
can't
Go right
possibly-
ahead, 'cause
My
I don't-
mother will spank me if I.
I know nothing. You're the expert here.
I think that the real investment that they're making, Julius, is probably $50,000 to $100,000 that they will invest in their consultants in order to try to process this property through. And our agreements do include a clause that they have to move that process forward in good faith. They can't just basically buy the property, sit on it, and think, let's just wait to see if we can flip it, and if we can, we'll make some money. They're gonna invest some real money in this.
And they already have.
And they're home.
Yeah, if you,
They already
It's not an investor, it's a
So-
home builder who only makes money really when they go vertical.
Now, are we obtaining that evidence of due diligence and say, okay, do they give us information?
get
Say,
all
hey, these
that.
are receipts of things that we spend money on engineers and things like that, and so that way, if they do walk away for some whatever
We
reason.
get the product.
we get the
Absolutely.
product. Yes, sir.
Oh, and then we also get the product, okay,
Yeah.
well, then that's.
So the next buyer that comes along,
Yeah.
if they were to walk, we're able to say, here's the due diligence that has been done.
Yeah.
And somebody else.
And that was the other reason, that's the whole basis for withholding a deposit too, because we could have sold it to somebody else that said that, I'm not saying they're not serious, I'm just
Yeah.
talking theoretical here.
Well,
that,
I mean,
you know,
part of the process is to vet them. Okay, so we sit down and talk to them, and we look at their past history.
part of our role.
And that doesn't mean that, like someone said, that doesn't mean they get down the end and they don't try to get out. But they'll have, as he said, they'll have probably, I'm doing one right now myself in Brevard County. We have $500,000 in it. And
You don't tend to see the reputable ones play that.
no, you don't. I mean,
It's the
so what's going to
fly-by-night
happen
guys.
is there's some big disruption in the economy, okay? And the housing market falls down. Then people are going to start looking, and I'm just talking frankly, they're going to start looking a ways out. But every home builder I talk to, and Jill and I talk to, there's a large shortage of supply. The supply is way behind demand, and it's not slowing down. And they had a couple little blips when they first did the first interest rate increase, and now the sales are picking right back up. So unless there's some big disruption, a war or something like that, most of them are still going strong.
There was a very interesting analysis I just read that a lot of people were expecting a real estate market meltdown. And they say it's just not happening. They don't see it.
Especially in residential.
And with the forecast that by next year, the Fed will begin to moderate on rates, they just don't think it's going to be.
Listen, I will tell you though, and sometimes it's the canary in the cave. In the
Yeah,
cave
you'll see it.
the builders were not providing the realtors any commissions. They didn't cooperate and co-broke
Oh, yeah.
with realtors at all because they said we don't need to.
Yeah,
We have
they
enough
didn't.
buyers.
Yes. Yeah.
But right now,
Yeah.
they're courting them like
Yeah.
crazy, giving them bonuses.
And they will for about the next 6 months, I
Yeah.
think.
You think?
Yeah.
Well, when I talk to them, I say, so what do you do when demand slows down, especially because of some increased cost to the buyer? They've got enough room built in, so they've been making, I won't say
I know,
excess
I know.
profits, but they've been
They
making
have.
pretty good money. And so they've sort of built this into their model that they probably won't get as much
Yeah.
for the houses as they did 6 or 8 months ago.
And what I was beginning to say, and to your point, they've pivoted, at least Ashton has, to a build-for-rent model, which, we've got a short period of time, and I don't know if it's a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is, before that sector of the market gets saturated, right? Just like everything else that we do in life. But for right now, for groups like Ashton, Landmark, some of these other build-for-rent guys that are getting in early and getting in first, they're going to close on these properties. And build-for-rent is in high demand right now. It just is. There's this whole sector of the market out there that want to rent homes. They don't want to be in an apartment, but they can't afford to buy a house. So I mean, I think we're going to be okay with these deals.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, so
It took a
essentially
long
there's,
time, didn't
so
it?
essentially there's no due diligence period then.
Well, it's
Yeah, the
over.
due diligence period
They've
is-
passed through it.
Yeah, no, but I'm talking about, but technically speaking, when I think when due diligence done, means that you can get your escrow. You lose your escrow. You know, that's to me the true definition.
Yeah.
I mean, we may call it something else, but
You're right.
it's due diligence is
Yeah.
forever
Yeah.
until everything. So,
But it-
because
it-
ending a due diligence doesn't mean anything.
it
You know?
It's
gets narrowed down.
contingent, yeah, on
Right,
only a
that's
few
the
things.
difference.
It
Yes.
gets narrowed down.
That they can't come back and say, well, we found this problem in
Yeah.
environmental.
Entitled.
Well, you're done with that. Now all you got to do is.
For the
It's
approvals.
only approvals, or it's very specific
That's right.
contingency in a
Yes.
way.
That's
It's
right.
only conditioned upon, the approval not getting approved. Not because, my financing, because if they're financing it, you're
All-
past the
all
due
of
diligence
that's
period.
gone.
We're all
The
past
appraisal, you
that.
don't agree with the appraisals or
All
whatever.
that's
Yeah.
changed.
Okay.
And different than Pine Tree, because Pine Tree has land use in place, right? So
Are we
we've
ready
already.
to talk about Pine Tree now?
Okay, yeah, then I'm good.
Well, and I don't have to
That's a
switch
good
over, I
segue.
want to use it as a comparison. Pine Tree has land use in place, so that has already been done, vetted, completed. Now, they need a rezone, but that takes a lot less time. There's a lot less risk when the land use is in place, because that's really the big unknown in these deals. And so in Pine Tree, these developers are willing to close sooner. And so, instead of a year, we're talking, I don't know what it is, 7 months or 8 months, and it's gonna happen, and they're predicated on preliminary site plan approval. So we don't have to do final site plan approval, we don't have to do permits, which is fairly aggressive when they're spending, and we'll go through it now, but upwards of $6+ million, so.
The bond, over 6.
Yeah, 6.5, it was our highest bid, but, so let me get into that real quick. So we did do an RFQ, you guys know
I'm good with
that.
Lakeview, by the way.
We did do the RFQ. The RFQ was emailed, posted online, and target marketed to over 3,000, it's 3,222 people to be exact, developers, builders, and investors. Out of that effort, the RFQ had a due date, it was May 6th. Out of that effort, we received 5 offers. Those offers were from Landmark, Peak Made, KB Homes, INB Homes, IN as in Nancy, B Homes, and ResiBuilt. And those offers ranged from 2.8 million upwards of 6 million. 5.5, maybe 5.5 was the low.
The first.
We've done 3 rounds now, so, yeah, it was 5.5. So, so what we did, we had these 5 offers, we vetted these buyers. What we said was, okay, instead of shortlisting to 2 of these guys, let's go out to all 5, let's give them the same counteroffer. Same terms, same counteroffer, see what happens. 2 of the 5 came back and accepted our counteroffer. That was Landmark, and I'll explain to you who these guys are after, but Landmark and Peak Made. So now we were down to 2. So we went back out to those 2 and said, you have a week to give us your best and final. We're not giving you any direction. So they could have come back with the original offer, they could have come back with something better, they could have told us they were no longer interested. We weren't sure what was gonna happen. Well, those 2 offers came in 2 weeks ago, I think it was. And so, again, Landmark and Peak Made, and they're very aggressive offers. So Landmark has come back with an offer of 6.5 million, and just so you guys know, we started out at 2.8 million in October of '21. So, values have increased 58%, yes. And it's
Almost
this
3
build,
times the
it's the
rate.
build for rent model. So it's just a different model. It's a revenue-based model, it's a cap rate model versus home builders that build homes and they have a certain cost and they're trying to get a certain spread. This is different, this is an investment sale, and so they were able to increase the price that they were getting so that they could pay more for these land deals, because construction costs are up, land costs were up. So
The
they
only
had,
issue on that, though, on a 6.5 valuation, how does that get to an appraisal? I mean, just because you offer, because
It's not
does the state statute
contingent.
require, does the state statute only, I guess it's a more of a
Well,
legal
that's only
question.
when we're buying.
Did that require when
Yeah.
we're buying
Yeah.
the 2 appraisals?
Right.
But when we're selling, they don't require?
Nope.
Selling, no.
They may do the income approach, though.
And that's what they do.
They do the income approach, and then, because since this one entity is gonna own all the
Yes.
homes.
They
Yes.
take the income and they capitalize it. They
Yeah.
sell it like an investment sale,
Yeah.
like you sell an office building or something like that. So it's all over the place.
It
I mean,
is.
it's just now starting to hit the major network about what's going on, but Landmark's been at it.
So Landmark's the one who bought the Jack Brack property on Narcousie a couple of months ago, and you'll see that comp. I mean, they paid 50-something a door for that deal. They're building 200 units there. But both buyers are strong national developers. Both buyers, interesting enough, are student housing developers. And when you think about it, student housing is built for rent because they're renting the houses. And so Landmark in particular, and just so you guys, want to go through the due diligence and approval timeframes. They're both at 90-day due diligence, so completely comparable on that.
Simple.
Yes, not
Title
approvals,
survey,
right.
boom, boom, boom.
They're both at 180-day approval period after your 90-day expiration, and that's to obtain your PSP. And they both have 210-day drop dead dates to close. So if they do not get their approvals on their PSP within 210 days, then the deal's done. If they get their approvals, and in these situations, if someone's super close to getting their approval and we're creeping up on that 210th day, I mean, we'll work through that with them. But the good thing is, if they get their approvals, their money is hard. So, and they're both putting up about between $200,000 and $250,000 in deposit. So once that 90 days passes, those deposits are hard, subject to those approvals. Same
Which is
thing.
PSP's plenty.
But PSP is a lot easier to get than a comp plan change, and it's a lot faster. So, but in terms of the strength of both buyers, Landmark has developed 31,000 student housing beds. PeakMade has developed 17,000 student housing beds, so very strong. The real difference is that Landmark has developed 3,000 build-for-rent cottage units, whereas PeakMade is just kind of starting in that realm. And Landmark offered $300,000 more than PeakMade. So PeakMade came best and final at 6.2, and Landmark came at 6.5. So we just, I mean, we feel like we've vetted them, pretty deeply. We don't want you to think that it's, well, we're recommending this one because they're paying more. I mean, there's a lot of other factors why. But for all intents and purposes, I think we all agree that we would recommend moving with Landmark. But that's really up to you guys. And there's no decision on the agenda tonight to make. So this is just informational for you.
But we are looking for direction. to be
Yeah,
able to
Yeah.
enter
so if you guys
into-
have a real concern, or if you
contract
have
to
some
bring back
questions,
to
we
the
want to
board.
hear it, because we're going to move from here to contract
Bring in a
negotiation.
contract
Right.
to the board.
Okay, then we'll come to you.
I just wonder how the people of Sawgrass are going to, that's the only thing, everything looks great. I think it's unbelievable, the appreciation that has occurred. And the only thing is the political side of it is the only thing that concerns me, because the people out in the Manor area and Sawgrass and those, they might be a little bit more passionate, not to have
Yeah, but-
rentals right there in our
So
backyard.
the site plan approval is really almost like, I don't want to call it a building permit, but it's almost prescribed by the code. So you're going through and making sure you have the right setbacks and the roads and streets can accommodate that. And I guess they could put pressure on if they thought there was some deficiency out there. And
But
this would
they
add
can't
to-
really say, no,
But
we don't
it's-
want.
Well, and let me ask you the product, because I'm
It's
just.
not a quasi-judicial hearing
The
either.
product that they build, the homes are actually
home.
like cottage, but they're
They're
smaller, aren't they?
townhomes.
They're basically town.
Like townhomes.
Yeah.
So they're building one on Narcousie, the Roberts property. Yeah. And one of the preliminary site plans that I saw that someone pointed out to me, like if the parking, for example, parking was a huge issue, because if my unit was over here and the parking was, the only other overflow parking was a pretty good
Away.
distance away.
Right.
So, I don't know, those are just the little nuances that someone could.
And those may come up,
Bring it
those
up.
may become issues as they're going through the PSP.
Yeah.
That's his love. Get those, keep the pen.
And you can see this too.
I do have two concerns.
Some
but
of them
if the other
have-
board members
Some have garages, I mean,
Yeah,
they.
some
they
don't, it just
price
Do you have any,
it-
any input?
No.
Or you okay?
No, I'm sorry.
They price it differently. It's almost like an apartment, but it's just not an apartment.
Yeah.
Mr. Aguayo, do you have anything, or?
I mean, I think that what Robert just alluded to is my biggest concern, that it's not necessarily, I wouldn't say that it's best use for the community, you know, from their perspective. And the people in the manor are gonna be, I mean, they're gonna, basically, this is just, now, it's not even private developers, right? Now we have municipal organizations, governmental bodies developing the county, you know, by selling their land. And I don't think that that's gonna be taken well, when it doesn't have to, right? If this were private land and it were two people making a deal, no big deal, right? The deal's fine. The work that you've done is excellent. I have nothing to say about what the team has done. But certainly, now we have a school district which is helping create a problem for everyone.
So I want to, but I do want to step back on that. So at the direction of the board, we went back for a year and we looked at professional development and commercial. And the city of St. Cloud did not really support that. In fact, they started asking us exactly what we were going to bring there. They were going to look on it as case-by-case basis. So the city does want this area to remain residential development. They did not want professional development or commercial going into our location. So then after a year of really no input, we came back to the board. So I do understand what you're saying, but we have to, you know, the city of St. Cloud is kind of controlling that. They want it to go to a residential buyer.
With all due
I mean,
respect, I don't think that,
Right.
there's a lot of people that are very happy with their city commission in St. Cloud.
Right.
For that reason. So they're not gonna win any popularity contests.
And as a matter of fact, that was the whole reason why I stopped this in the very beginning, because I thought it'd be more appropriate to have like a park or some other recreational use. Or have the city use it for their own, like a joint use facility, or for their own purposes to expand utilities. And so it's actually disheartening to hear now that the city of Kissimmee now wants to build a park right next to it. And they want to build it inside the development. It has nothing to do with us. Here we are, we offered to sell it to them for, you know, whatever million, I told them just pay for our closing costs. And now they're talking about, I think they had a public hearing, they might have approved it, and now they're actually building a park inside of a development as opposed to this one, which is more publicly accessed, available on the main road. So to me, the city of St. Cloud didn't quite, you know, I don't know what they were planning. I don't even
They
want to
dropped
put
the
words in
ball.
their mouth.
We
I don't-
offered them a
Multiple
deal,
times.
Right.
and so,
Yeah, and they rejected it, and so that's why, to Mr. Aguilo's point, you know, I can't really fault you guys, because you guys did stop it. We went there, we tried to negotiate with the city, they came back, said, oh, there's no use for it. You know, then I was like, oh, can you guys do a park out of it at least? And like, oh, we don't need a park. And then, for some reason, magically, a park comes 6 months later, you know what I mean? It is what it is. And then that's why I was asking, can we try to look at some kind of commercial uses, you know, out of that, to try to minimize the impact of residential? Now, what do we have in terms of evidence that that was unsuccessful? I mean,
Well,
did
we-
anybody make any bids at
Oh,
all?
yeah.
Did they make
No,
any
we went and
offers?
looked also,
Or-
it fell flat on its face
Yeah.
for commercial.
No, do we
Someone
have-
wanted to store old RVs.
Yeah, and then there was
You know, I mean, it wasn't like,
It
we
was
had
not.
maybe some self-storage guys, but the city said they wouldn't support it. And in that case, we would have needed a comp plan change. So what I was gonna say, the land use is in place for residential. So I mean, the 20-year plan to make this site residential is already there, has been. So changing that to commercial, I think we would get even more pushback.
'Cause then it's another alteration again, so. 'cause
When it's a land,
It-
yeah,
it's a-
it's
it's a
I know,
more
long
open-
process.
Which is the same scenario we're
It's a
talking about
more
in the first
open
one with Lakeview,
process.
that you have to look for something to get approved. Now they say, hey, wait, now we're in the same scenario. I want to sell it as commercial, it's not commercial, then we have to truly condition it on it. If it doesn't get it, then we're kind of spinning our wheels. So,
And this kind of speaks to the purpose that we would buy land to begin with, right? So, I mean, this really, its purpose is for education, right? So that's the purpose of all of our land, and it should be. We shouldn't be in the land speculation business, and I feel like that's kind of something that's been happening right now.
but
So-
to the district's offense, in my historical knowledge, because I've been on the board before, lately it just seems that every large development is large. You know what I mean? So we get land dedicated
Right.
to us. But back in the day, they weren't always this large, and there was no concurrency. Or there was concurrency, but it was at a certain number.
Yeah.
So we were building all these subdivisions and not getting land. So we
And-
collected the impact fee money, but we literally had to almost bank land to make sure that we bought it, because no developer was giving us land because it wasn't large enough. So I'm not trying to defend anyone, but I gotta call fair fair. You know what mean? It's
I
like-
wasn't here there, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard, and I've run big acquisition programs where you're doing multiple assemblages and stuff like, and you're looking out, and I work for utilities, you're looking out trying to figure out where growth's coming, so you're gonna end up with excess land. I mean, there's no way around
Yeah,
it.
so I can't fault the
These
school district for land
values-
banking at the time.
You know, lucky for us that now that area is developed
Right.
and the land value's gone way up.
And the sale of one of these properties pays for one of the other properties you just bought. 'Cause
Right.
you-
was-
So the only thing I would ask them, because, I wouldn't mind approving it to go forward, because I think that everyone did do their proper, Ps and Qs and everything. The only thing I would ask them, because I still feel like that number is really high, you know what I'm saying? And, great, kudos to getting it, but I'm just still skeptical that it will really pass an appraisal. So maybe, instead of saying, okay, we're just gonna take the higher number, that maybe you go back one more round and say, okay, who's gonna waive the appraisal, or who will pay above?
There is
No
no
appraisal.
appraisal
Yeah,
contingency.
So
we're not-
Julius,
we're not taking an
you say
appraisal
200
contingency.
units? How many units did they say? How many
Oh,
units?
here,
Yeah.
175.
Okay, so round it to two.
Yeah.
$2,000 a month, which I'm sure they'll probably try to get, is
least.
4.8 million a year.
It
I mean,
works.
I
But it
mean,
means it's subject to an appraisal then?
It is
No,
not.
it
Oh,
is
it's not
not.
subject to, that's not part of the
only thing it
contingency.
is they have to go through the site
They're
plan
due
approval
diligence.
process.
Okay, so
This
then,
is a good
okay.
deal for us.
We just have
Who the heck does an offer like that? I'm like, okay, I guess, they
Well,
really
because,
want it bad.
because
Well, they have their
they're-
due diligence.
They're
It's in their
taking
sole
this income,
discretion.
and they're capping it
Yeah.
at 5 or 6,
Percent,
a
yeah.
cap rate, which is a 5 is a 20 multiple.
Right.
Okay, and so they're selling it into the financial markets as someone's buying like a bond.
Okay, then I don't have that condition then, because my thing was, okay, I thought it was maybe a little too
No.
aggressive. I mean, we could probably get it, but I wanted to say, hey, then who's willing to pay above the appraised value when it comes in? But if it's not even subject to an appraisal, then I have no issue with it at all.
So I don't know how to help you with your problem. I'm glad I'm not on the board.
So-
But I get what you're saying, but I don't know the way around it.
Marcus.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so if it's okay with you guys, what we'll do is we'll negotiate with Landmark, who offer the most and has a little bit more experience than the two. If we're successful with that, we'll bring you the contract for review and approval. If we're not, then we'll move to the other company. Okay?
Great.
Any other, we don't
Yeah.
have anything else?
I can save
No,
us a
that's
lot of time tonight. There are two real
Thank you,
estate
guys.
issues under my reports. John, can you hang on just?
Do you
to-
need
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
No, they're not.
You don't need me, right?
No, no, no.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks, guys.
here, you want- take your.
Yeah, we do need this back, please. If you need it, we can send you copies.
Please do.
Copies? Yeah.
Fine.
There are just two reports I was going to give you tonight on real estate. One is Hickory Tree. Yeah, Rhonda, where is that property exactly, so that we know what we're talking
So
about?
you take Hickory Tree to Nolte, and you make a right, and then you go inside of the old Hickory subdivision, and you run it straight to the back, and our school site is right there.
Yeah, I remember that one. You
Yes.
finally
It's-
told me,
it's a
it's in that
school
roundabout
site.
or something like that, or?
That we ended up apparently not needing and not going to be needing.
Well, through the
But-
purchase of Canoe Creek,
Right.
yes.
The problem is that the property was dedicated to the school board for educational purposes, and if it was not going to be used, there's a reverter.
Right.
The corporation that dedicated is out of business. So the law says you then have to look for the board of directors. So we've done a diligence search. So what we're planning on filing within the next week is a quiet title action that says to the court, declare the property ours. Because, I mean, you talk about a lot of opportunities. We think also, as I've analyzed it, if you look at the development, I think there's arguments that even with the reverter, if somebody stood up, the judge would say, no, the school board has a right to it. So we'll be filing that until the school board has a problem with that. Otherwise, this property is just going to sit there.
Now, what about, Ronan is not that far. That's really close to Ronan, the new Ronan
Ronan,
development.
mhm.
And I still had the heartache of, building a school across the street from another school, almost like looking at the other school.
Tree, yeah.
Yes, so maybe then, instead of developing in Ronan, what if we develop the school there? That way we don't lose the reverter clause, and now we can take Ronan and like do some impact-free credits or.
Stanford have to answer that, Julius.
So Roan Bridge is a K-8, and it has been dedicated for quite some time, and it's due to the number of units going inside of Roan Bridge. It was over the 750 trigger. Old Hickory is it's a K-5, so it's 15 acres with on-site retention. So we definitely will not get the relief that we need because the extra acreage is not there to turn it into a K-8 and to handle the on-site retainage. So based on the number of units that are coming in, we can still support that Roan Bridge will be needed in full, as well as Hickory Tree, as well as we still need an additional school on a green site for an elementary site outside of all the ones that we are currently getting dedicated inside of the subdivisions as well.
Is this the piece that's in Gramercy, on the backside of Gramercy, that piece that we own?
It really belongs to Old Hickory, but yes, it's at the
It's that-
connector of Gramercy and Old
We're
Hickory.
butting up against the man, like,
Yes.
I think Rambler or Packard or something.
So I guess the point with that is, don't we just build a school there?
So when we purchased and took over Canoe Creek, the charter school,
Yes.
that eliminated the need for the Old Hickory relief with the Roan Bridge relief.
I know, but with Roan Bridge coming in though and being developed, you just gave us a thing 2 seconds ago saying there's gonna be more houses to justify that new school.
But we need the school more up on the Narcousie, more out east area. We don't need it compacted right there between Michigan Avenue, Old Hickory, Canoe Creek. They're all kind of just lining up. The growth is more toward the east and the Narcousie area. So Roan Bridge and Canoe Creek kind of take care of that along with Michigan Avenue. And then we need the elementary schools to work more toward the east, toward Triple H and back up.
I'm getting a little bit confused, because I figured that they were like really close to each other though. Because Hickory Tree, okay, I see the map here.
It's Orange Avenue, Orange
Yeah,
Avenue.
so Hickory
very-
Tree, just north of Nolte, that's gonna be Roan, right? I'm looking at a
See
map
Orange
here.
Avenue?
So straight across the street from Hickory Tree Elementary is the Roan Bridge property.
Right.
And then the school site's more to the corner of Orange Avenue.
Orange Avenue, yeah. Orange Avenue will go all the way to Nolte. It's gonna go all the way through.
Okay, there's Michigan, I don't even see an orange. Delaware. Oh, there's orange, okay.
It terminates and then it turns back to the left to 19.
It's 19, right? So the school's gonna be up there then, right? So it's not across the street against Hickory. For some reason, I thought it was, I guess Roan was in front of it, so it's not gonna be facing right in
No,
front of
the
it.
Roan development is across the street from Hickory Tree, but we're on.
Ah,
the
I see what you're saying. So,
western
yeah,
side
so
with
that is the
fire
board, that is the
department.
beginning of the border of it, but that's not where the school site's gonna be.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
No,
That's
they
what I was
will
just,
not literally
yeah, I thought it was,
face
yeah, because I know
each other.
Ronan was right there.
Yeah,
That's what I was
they will
saying,
not
that just
face
threw
each
me
other.
off, because I know Ronan was there, but I thought the school was gonna be right across the street from it. How are we gonna have two schools like right across from each other?
No, they won't face each other, but the
Okay.
Roan Bridge development is straight
So
across. the
that's
street.
on Hickory Tree. On the Oxer property, remember I talked to you all about the fact we own the land that wraps around, and we gave South Florida an easement. But we've learned that because Tupperware's closed the road, we'd have to access now, if we don't do what I'm going to cover with you again, we'd have to access our buses onto
South OBT.
South OBT, make a right, and then make a U-turn, which is not exactly the safest thing we want to do. So I talked to you about, we were going to come to you and say we need to condemn, because South Florida's taking the position, they want us to condemn the easement on our property. We've been talking with the general counsel at South Florida about, guys, why don't you just voluntarily release the easement? So he's doing his due diligence to see how much of this is, they just don't want to be politically seen as giving anything away. And so we may have to come back the next meeting with a resolution of necessity and say, guys, we don't like the idea of condemnation. We don't do it on private property. This is our property, but if we don't do it, we got a mess in terms of the safety of the buses. And we're doing everything we can to avoid that, but it wasn't a problem when everything was worked out with Tupperware, but then Tupperware people recently came forward, and their safety people said, you have to close that road. We can't afford to take the risks of all this traffic. And so it's their private property, they get to do it, so I'll keep you posted on that, too.
Is that all? Okay. Adjourn.